Welcome to channel Qtomation. In our last session, we have seen how to get information about cookies from responses. Now, in today's session, we will see how to fetch information of headers from response in REST assured. So, we will use similar example of our last time. So, if you see, this is my postman in which whenever we hit the get request of www.samsung.com, we can see cookies. Those cookies verification we have already seen in our last session, and along with the cookies in response we are also able to see headers. So these are basically headers which are coming into the response. So we will see by using rest assured how we can verify headers, how we can put validation on headers as well. We have to understand that header also contains name and value. So this is a header name, this is a header value. Some header values might change. For example, date, or let's say server timing related things. And some header values might remain constant as well. For example, content type, or let's say XPrem options, content encoding. So every time you hit the request, these values remain same. And some values might change as well. So now let's see practically how we can fetch header information from response. Let's go to Eclipse. I'm going to create a new file. Let's create a new class. I'm naming it as header info demo, and let's create the class. After creating the class, first let's import some of the static package which we require for rest assured. So I'm just copying from our last session. Let's paste it here. Cookies related we actually don't require. Map also we don't require now for this example. Okay, so after creating the class, in fact, let me just copy our previous session's code as well. So I will just copy first one. Let's create a method that is, let me just close this one, or we can just right away create a new one only. So we have to create one method. I'm naming it as test headers info. This is a method I have created, and obviously we have to provide at the rate test annotation, and then our regular syntax of given dot when dot then, given when and then section. In given section we don't have any prerequisite. In when section we are going to hit which URL? We are going to hit this is the URL which we are going to hit. After hitting this URL, we will get the response, and we can validate the response in then section. So now let's say my requirement is I want to check in the response content type header value is this one that I want to verify. So just like our last session, we can simply use one method. In then section we can use dot header. So dot header method we can use. Inside this dot header, we can put the name of the header for which we want to verify the value. So content hyphen type is the name. I am just copying this. So my content type of the header, so my header which is having name of content type should be having which value? This value. So I am just copying this and let's paste it here. So it will check in the response whether I am getting content type header name with this value or not. If it is this is matching correctly, it will pass the test case. Otherwise, it will fail the test case. And similarly, we can also validate multiple header as well. For example, let me again validate one more. Let's say Xframe options. So I'm just copying these Xframe options dot header again. Here we have to put key. And what is the Xframe options value? This is the value. That value also we can paste it here. So it will check after getting the response from when section, it will hit the URL. Response will be received. From response, it will check content type header is present or not with this value. Also, it will check Xframe options with this value. So now let's execute this file. Run as test-ng test. We are not logging anything in console. So it will either pass or fail the test case directly. If you see test case got passed, that means it is successfully validating whether this header value is present like this or not. Or let's say if I am changing some value, I am just adding some random text here. So let's add some random text and again run the file. Now this time what will happen? Now this time test case will fail. If you see test case immediately failed. Why it failed? It is showing you this. It is showing you expected header value content type was not this one. It is showing you why it got failed and it was this one. So that's why the test case got failed. So that means our logic and code is working correctly. If it is exactly matching with that header value, then only it will pass. Otherwise, test case will fail. So we have to use dot header for comparing, for checking that specific header name and its value is present or not. So that is our first scenario, or we can say a first example. Now in this case, we have checked for specific header name and value. But what if I want to print all the header and values? Now my use case is, or my requirement is, I want information of all the headers and all the values, all the header and its value. So every header name and its value I want to fetch from the response. So again, in that case, what we have to do is, let me just show you. So I will just give some priority to first test case. Let's say priority equals to 1. Now I will create one more new test. I'm naming it as, let's say, test all headers, or let's say get any name we can give. Test all headers information. This is the method I have created. Now similar to last session, what we will do, we will hit the response, hit the request. We will not use then section for validation. Instead of that, we will store that response in response type of variable. So in this, I am just using given dot when, and after hitting this, we will fetch the response. and we are not going to use then section for validation. Instead of that, I am just creating one response type of variable in which we are storing the response which we are receiving. So that will be stored in this response variable. After storing that in response variable, now what we have to do is, from this response variable we can fetch all the headers. So by using headers method, so res dot headers, this one will fetch all the headers from that response. All the headers, that means it will be of headers data, headers class. So we have to create one variable of headers type. So from headers class we have to create one variable. Let's say I'm naming it as all underscore headers equals to response dot headers, and we have to also import these headers from io dot rest assured package. So what we are doing here is, we are first hitting the url, we are getting the response, we are storing that response in response type of variable. From this response type of variable we are using res dot headers. It will fetch all the headers along with its name and value, and that will be stored in this all headers, which is of headers type. So this all headers is of headers type. And now we have to use for loop. Now we can use one for loop for iteration. Now we have to understand that it is not a hash map, but still this all headers will contain header information in the form of name and value, key and value. It is not a hash map, but it is basically of headers type. It will contain all the headers information. So it will contain each and every header and its name, header name and header value. Every pair will be stored in this all headers variable. Now in for loop, what we have to do is, we will fetch one by one every header pair, we will fetch one by one, and we will store that in header type of variable. And now we have to also import this header from rest assured. So just understand, first we have stored all the headers into this all headers, and then we have created one more header type of, let's say, header hd. For using in for loop, we can simply fetch each header pair from this all headers one by one into this hd variable, that is nothing but of header type. And now from that we can easily fetch name and value. So I'm just creating one string, let's say header name equal to hd dot get name method. So this method will fetch one by one from all headers. First pair will be stored in this hd, which is of header type, and from this hd, in first iteration, first pair will be stored. From that we can fetch the name, and we can also fetch the value as well. So let me just create one more, let's say header underscore value variable, which will store hd dot get value. So it will fetch the value of that header, it will fetch the name of that header, it will be stored in header name and header value. In first iteration, it will get this first header name, first header value. In second iteration, it will get this one and this one. In third iteration, it will get this one and this one up to last header. So it will iterate through all the headers which are present in this all headers. One by one, it will fetch name, it will fetch value, and then we can also print those. So let's say I'm just wanting to print those. So first we will print header name. Let's say I'm just giving the header name. I'm adding some space in between those, and along with the space, let's say add some special character. Let's say I'm adding star, again plus and header value. So it will store, it will print header name as well as header value. In this iteration, one by one it will print all the header name and all the header values. So this is how we can use for loop. So this is our method example, which will first hit the request, hit the URL, fetch the response, store it in the response type of variable. Then we have created res.headers, which will fetch all the headers from this response. It will store that in all headers in the form of key value pairs, though it is not a it is not a hash map, but it is of headers type. And then we are using for loop iteration. One by one we are fetching every pair from this all headers in storing it in header type of variable. And from this header type of variable, now we are getting name and getting value. So in every iteration, it will fetch name value, it will move to the next pair, it will fetch name and value, and it will also print those. So eventually it will print all the header name and all the header values. So now let's execute this test case and let's see into the console whether it is able to print all the header name and values or not. Both the cases successfully passed. Both the test cases got passed. And now if you see in console output, all the header name, its value, this is the header name, its value, this is the header name, its value. All the header name and all the values got printed here. If you see, this is the highlighted header and names. So all the headers along with its values are printed in our console. So this is how we can work with headers. So this is how we can work with headers in Rest Assured. So I hope you like this video. In the next session, we will see some more important topic of Rest Assured. Thanks everyone.